We're going to move on, though, to our next topic of conversation, and we're going to talk about a quarterback who could end up in a Viking uniform, but we're not.
Maybe.
But we're not talking about his play on the field or what he brings to certain teams. We're talking about, I'm going to call it off the field. Well, even though he's on the field when he's doing it, it's complicated. But we're going to be talking about Colin Kaepernick.
On the side of the field.
Mark, I'm just going to throw it out plain and simple, just like our title on YouTube says. Is Colin Kaepernick right to sit out during the National Anthem?
Well, the first thing, and you're going to get mad at me because I told you what the title should be, but I think the question is a little unfair in the sense of right is kind of the wrong word because there's no right or wrong when it comes to what he did, in the sense that people are going to say he should, I disagree with what he's protesting, or I agree with it.
So you're throwing me under the bus is
a little
basically
bit.
What you're doing.
But I admitted that I was the one who came up with the title. But now, I think what really is the discussion is the actual protesting itself.
Mm-hmm.
Not whether you agree with him standing up for, he's not directly standing up for Black Lives Matter. He's not directly saying that cop reforms need to happen. He's just saying there are things, social justice, that are wrong. So I do want to point that out too, because a lot of people are putting various things in Colin Kaepernick's mouth and saying he's standing up for various things, but he's not specifically stood up for any cause or said that anything needs to happen. I think that's important to recognize because people get very passionate about this stuff, and they want to just vilify anyone who they think associate with anything they disagree with. So remember that Colin Kaepernick has not stood up for any one cause in specific.
Well, and I mean, the one thing I want to say is just and I know you're on the same side of me in this regard, is like the fact that he's protesting, I have no problem with it. Go ahead, dude. I don't have and that's the great thing about I'm going to bring this into kind of what he's talking about with the flag. That's a great thing about America. Mark can say one thing, I don't have to agree with him, and I can say another thing.
Mm-hmm. We can move on and we can be friends the next day.
However, the thing that I think is, and this is kind of a greater issue, is, it's kind of off the beaten path, but I think it relates, is I just think people get offended too easily these days. I am not going to have the same opinion as you.
And we're gonna get to that, Ricky. It's gonna come up. Believe me, it will.
Can I say something that my grandmother used to always say?
Sure.
Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got them.
Yeah. And much like assholes, everybody thinks their own don't stink.
Yep, that's exactly it.
So let's get into it. So you asked me the question, and I went on a little side note, but the question is Colin Kaepernick right to not stand up when the national anthem gets played? Abso-fucking-lutely. He has every right to not do that.
As an American.
As an American, he has every right to protest if he wants to protest. Big deal in that case. What the big thing that people are kind of freaking out with, people are saying he is disrespecting soldiers. Do we agree that that's really what people are mad about? People think he's disrespecting soldiers.
And that's kind of my big thing with this whole situation is I feel like the point he is trying to make is being clouded, and not the reason why it's being clouded, but it's being clouded because people see that and go, oh, he doesn't want to stand during the national anthem. Well, he must not think that the men and women who fought for our freedoms are important. And I'm going to be honest. I think the same. My first thought when I saw it was I was kind of a little angry, but it wasn't like that super angry. It was like that.
You're a little miffed.
Wow, I'm kind of a little pissed off. Why wouldn't you want to stand during the national anthem? That's usually when we honor the men and women who have fought for our freedom, even though that's not technically what the song's about. That's what it's become for us. And that's kind of, I kind of think it was a good point I listened to today when I was listening to ESPN radio here in Chicago. They brought up the point of it's going to be funny to see what the NFL thinks of this, because the NFL is a business and an organization that has strong ties to the military. Whenever we show a Super Bowl or an NFC championship game, they always pan over to the soldiers watching overseas. This doesn't look it doesn't look very well in that regard. However, it's one of those things where, but that's not what he's protesting.
Exactly. And I think we need to, that's the thing that we need to get to. The problem, what a lot of your thing boils down to with this is that you are saying you're cool with him protesting. You think that you think he should have chose a different way to protest because the way he did it is kind of muddying his argument.
However, I want to throw one more thing in there. I don't disagree with you have the right to protest. Do it. As long as it's peaceful, which this is, I have no problem with it. Fine. I do also believe that what you said, it is muddying, but it's kind of like this tricky third one that's right in the middle of those two. I don't have the right to tell you if it's as long as it's peaceful. I don't have the right to tell you how to protest.
Yeah,
I don't have that right.
Yeah,
I don't have the right to say, Mark, you can't protest that way. However, I can say I don't agree with how you're protesting. That's where I'm coming from.
So what it comes down to, people are saying that it's a disrespectful thing to the military. This is my stance on it. I think that Colin Kaepernick has every right to make this protest. He makes any kind of protest he wants. If he wants to protest that he doesn't like the color of his uniform, he can do that.
As long as it's peaceful.
Sure. And I think that, he can protest literally anything he wants. Some things are going to have more value than others. But he can do whatever the fuck he wants. So he's allowed to do that. People are saying that Colin Kaepernick is spitting in the face of our soldiers. And you make the point of, the military and the NFL having close ties to each other. There are lots of marketing reasons why that's the case. The NFL doesn't just happen to love the military.
Well, it's a business.
It's a business decision on why they do that. A lot of their fans have ties to the military, so therefore they do too. And people are saying he's spitting in the face of the military, but when the military fights, what are they defending? Our freedoms. Okay. What is the first freedom that comes to people's mind? Freedom of speech. Unless you're one of the gun owners who really, really loves your guns and Obama's going to come take them, then you might say the Second Amendment, but that's not the argument today. So he hasn't tried to take your guns yet. Anyways, so the first thing people think of is freedom of speech. That is what we say are fighting, whether it's the Navy, the Army, the Marines, the SEALs, whatever they might be. One day our space fighters out there, they are fighting for our freedom to say what we want, to express ourselves how we want, to practice our own religion, freedom of press, blah, 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 all this good stuff. All right. They're fighting for that. So for then Colin Kaepernick to exercise his freedom of speech, that's how I can't understand how that is disrespecting the soldiers. Even if he were to go up to a soldier and say, fuck you, I don't agree with the Iraqi war. I don't agree with Desert Storm 2.0 out there.
But
let me do it.
Wait. But on that part, I would, if that really happened, I'd be like, well, Colin, learn your fucking facts.
That's not the person who's doing it.
It's not the person, yeah.
But he in that case, he would be mocking the symbol, much like he's mocking the symbol. That's just something that represents it. Anyways, he can go up to somebody and say, fuck you, I don't agree with what, not you specifically, to make this point, because people are angry in the comment section already, but I don't agree with the whole military. If he goes up to a military complex and he flicks off the Pentagon, that doesn't make sense. It's different things here. But still, that would make sense, right? He is still using that freedom of speech. We might not like how he's doing it, but he is using the thing that they are defending. So I get why people are saying that doesn't add up to them. But really, in my eyes, for us to sit there and say, you can't use your freedom of expression, your freedom of speech, your freedom to protest however you would like, peacefully, of course. That is the thing that's really disrespectful for the soldiers. We had men and women who die fighting in one way or another associated with our military for those freedoms. And when we're saying Colin Kaepernick cannot when we're saying that Colin Kaepernick expressing these freedoms, Colin Kaepernick using his freedom of speech, his freedom to protest, when we're saying that act is disrespecting the military, to me, that does not add up because he is doing exactly what they fought for. If anything, and I'm not trying to tell people how they should feel about it, but you would think that somebody who has gone out there and risked their life to give you the freedom of expression is going to be happy when you use that right, no matter how you do it. If you're saying, I hate the military, in that case, I know it doesn't make sense that someone in the military is happy, but they should be going, damn right you're able to protest us. Damn right you're able to say that. I risked my life so you can hate me. And that is one of the most heroic, one of the most patriotic things that can possibly, be said for our country. But not me in particular, but me speaking for someone who theoretically is a military man. I went out, I fought, I could have died, so that way you can go out there and you can protest me. It is not a pretty job. It's a fucking dirty job, but they know it's a dirty job. And I'm sure that even if they don't agree, people who went out and fought are just happy that Colin Kaepernick is able to do what he wants to make that protest.
Now I want to turn this a little bit. And one thing we haven't talked about is, I hope I say her name right because I usually watch her stuff when it comes on my Facebook feed. It's one of those things where
you just like her because she's pretty.
Well, she's pretty. She's really hot, and I love blondes. But it's one of those things where you like to see how the other half lives. And for me, because
although to be fair, she's very far on the right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
To me,
so it's not even half. It's like 10 people.
I'm not super far left.
You're very central.
I'm very center.
You're very center.
I would describe myself as I'm center.
Slightly left
but
of
I'm
center.
Slightly left, yeah. And whenever I watch it, I think her name is, Tommy Lauren or Tommy Loran. Whenever I see her videos pop up on my news feed, it's kind of like a car crash. I have to watch it just to see how the other half lives, how the other 10%, maybe even 1%, live in this country.
Much more accurate.
One thing that she mentioned, and she harped home in all of her rambling.
Before she went and got kind of racist.
She got very racist. Yeah. But she mentioned that, and I've heard a few people mention this, that about Colin Kaepernick's parents. Yeah. Not his actual parents, but his foster parents who are both white. And the reason why I bring that up is he has since apologized for it, but ex-NFL player Rodney Harrison went on Sports Talk 790 today and decided to speak his mind a little bit. I'm going to hit you with what he said, and you can give your thoughts on it, and I'll give my thoughts. Here's the exact quote. I tell you this, I'm a black man, and Colin Kaepernick, he's not black. He cannot understand what I face and what other young black men and black people face, or people of color face on a every single day basis. When you walk in the grocery store and you might have $2,000 or $3,000 in your pocket, and you can go into Foot Locker and they're looking at you like you about to steal something. End quote. And to me, this is the exact root. Like, this is the actual issue that Colin Kaepernick is trying to protest. And I want to say this. This is my big thing about it. I will never understand. And it's not one of those things where...
And that's okay to say.
Well, it's not one of those things where, Ricky, you just don't want to understand. No, I will never understand really how the other side lives.
You can get little tidbits here and there. You can empathize with it, but you will never truly be able to sympathize that. I will never get that 100%.
Yeah. Because I will never have that life experience that Rodney Harrison was talking about. I will never have that. And
you can even have experience where someone thought you were going to steal anything, but is not going to be the same.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking back into as kids, it's one of those things where even growing up with mostly white friends in junior high before I got to high school, and then it kind of got the inner circle kind of grew.
Expanded, yeah. Got a little more diverse.
It was one of those things where you'd walk in, group of punk-ass kids, like 6th, 7th grade. Of course, they're like, well, watch these kids. They might steal something. But that's all kids.
Very, very different. It's not just because you're a black kid.
You're a group of kids walking into a convenience store, and of course they're going to watch you a little bit closely. But I will never understand the exact thing that Rodney Harrison was talking about, and that's a side of it that people like Tommy pointed in. They put the microscope on. They attacked it because, you can't talk about this because your foster parents were white and you grew up in that situation. I think that's kind of like, it's one of those things where I don't want to, I'm not going to say it. I don't want to speak for Colin Kaepernick. Just go. Or else I'm going to start speaking for him.
I think that the big thing here is, and people like to use this argument of, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, or you are this, you are not that. But she likes to.
Everything's not black and white.
Well, yeah, but what does she like to? What did she say? It was gonna like vehemently destroy that argument or something like that, sentence by sentence.
Sentence by sentence.
But here is one thing: if you want to say that because you do not understand Colin Kaepernick, because you are, she's basically calling him an Oreo, which is a very offensive term. Somebody who, you might be a person of color, but you're white on the inside. And therefore you cannot understand these black people. Or not necessarily that you can't understand, but you can't protest for these black people because you are not one of them. Yet she supports all those white Republicans who are telling women what they can and cannot do with their bodies, telling gays and lesbians who they can and cannot marry, who are telling the people of color who statistically, are in not all of them, but the people of color who are in inner cities who need government support, that they cannot get it because they are lazy, and why can't they just go get a job? You can't fucking make that argument and then for those things saying that these white guys on Capitol Hill can tell these black kids in the inner city that, no, I'm sorry, mommy can't have food stamps to help feed you tonight. Because, I don't know, maybe some black person somewhere might spend it on crack cocaine. The reason I think that is because I'm racist. But I don't even fucking care that I just pissed some people off down in the comment section. Let me get to it right now. But she can't make that argument and then be a hypocrite by telling Colin Kaepernick that because he doesn't understand this, because he has white foster parents, he can't fight for this. We should be fucking happy that some guy who has gotten all this privilege in his life says, shit, I'm from a place of privilege, and all these millions of people are not in that same privilege I am from. What am I doing? What can I do? You know what I can do? I am formerly one of only 32 people who had this miraculous job of being the quarterback of an NFL team, the starting quarterback. Only 32
really
of those jobs. Well, I said used to have that job.
Okay.
Now he's a backup, but he might start at some point, maybe for the Vikings. And he's saying, you know what I can do? I can make my stance now. I can do it here on the world stage, on TV, where people are going to talk about it. We should just be happy that somebody realizes they can do something, whether they're white, whether they're black, whether they're Asian. Doesn't matter. Just that they have.
Can I say something?
I'll finish this and then I'll let you get to it. We should be happy that somebody has said, wow, I don't care if it affects me or not. There is something going on and I want to help.
And you know what? The one thing, I know this is getting a little bit off of the Colin Kaepernick question that we asked and more on the issue. I like that we're actually talking about this because the point is Colin Kaepernick stood up for an issue, a very important issue.
And one that's important to him.
It's very important to him. It's important for where the country is right now. It needs to be fixed.
It's important to a lot of the kids that are watching him play football.
And it's one of those things where you might not like how he went about protesting it, but that's the point of freedom of speech. Like I said, I'm not going to agree with Mark. He's not going to agree with me all the time. I'm not going to agree with you.
And it got you talking about it, didn't it?
Well, and here's the thing I wanted to throw out there, and you just sparked it back into my head. When we were... This one took a little longer. I mean, I call it kind of like, I think I'm just to make fun of it. It's kind of like the pre-podcast pillow talk is what I'm going to call it. Is we talked for an hour basically on this subject, just throwing our thoughts out there. And my mom, who is not a huge sports person, like, yeah, she'll watch the Cubs if they're on because, like, I'm interested in the Cubs, or she'll listen to me and my dad bicker about Jay Cutler, where, yeah, I don't support Jay Cutler. My dad hates Jay Cutler, but my dad isn't as, like, sports analyst, like, minded as me or you. Even though we're not real, like, ESPN analysts, we think about it more on that analytical side of it. My mom was like, oh, you know what pissed me off? She starts talking, like, she couldn't put a name to it. And she's like, oh, what's it? I go, Colin Kaepernick. And she's like, yeah, that guy. Now, she was on one side. She's very passionate because of how she lives. She's a very hardworking, she's a hard worker and works to give me and my sister and my family everything that we have today. And that's the thing. I was like, holy shit. A woman that doesn't watch sports whatsoever,
doesn't care about sports,
was passionate about it now
because some athlete did something
and knew it.
Yeah.
Now, was she on the same side as Colin Kaepernick? Not 100%, but she was in that minority that's like you throw a football around in that one, the kind that can't get past that part of it.
Something I want to say too is we're ignoring the fact, people there's a lot of people out there who are upset that's saying, and this, I think your mom's one of these people probably, that's saying, Colin Kaepernick, you throw a football around for a living, keep your politics out of my sports. A lot of people are saying
everything but the last part, because my mom doesn't care about the sports part. My mom was more on the side of, and you got to think about it where she comes from. She is from, like, and my family wasn't the... Now, was I in the family where we didn't know what we were going to eat? Not when I was kids, but now, I'll be honest, it's not the best financial situation, just because I think we're all kind of in that same boat, unless we're in the 1%. And I know me and you are not in that 1%. And she's always, and it's kind of instilled with me, just the hard work aspect. Work hard for what you want, and if you work hard, you will get those good things. Like, whatever you put into something is what you're going to get out of it, kind of a situation. And that's why she's on that side of it. But the one thing I wanted to say... I'm
not going to touch that argument.
No.
We'll go...
No, I'm not trying to, throw my family's beliefs on here. I wanted to get, though, to the part of that Tommy Lauren thing that is complete ludicrous. And I have to bring this up, because it is the worst part of the whole thing, is at the end of her video, when I believe she used the quote, when does the buck stop?
Yeah.
And African Americans take responsibility for where they are at right now. That is ludicrous. That is absolutely ludicrous. And like you mentioned it earlier, like, oh, when she went full racist mode, that was the part of the video where she went full-blown racist. Yeah. And that is ludicrous. I can't say that enough.
Even if, and she's not one of these people, but even if you want to be one of those people who like innocently or naively means it, there's so many racist undertones that come with those type of things, and there's so many more social issues that come into it. We don't have time to get to all of them in this podcast, so we're not going to try. And there are a lot of people who are better at addressing those things than we are. So the one thing I want to say, going back to the people who are upset saying, keep the politics out of my sports. Of course, a lot of people are making the connection with Ali and saying that we are praising him now because it already happened. We like it when it doesn't inconvenience us. But here's the thing about protests that people forget. Protests are not supposed to be pretty. They are not supposed to be convenient. They are not supposed to let you live your merry life. Protests are supposed to, by definition, inconvenience you, so that way you are forced to be addressed with the issue. The reason why protesters block streets is because it annoys the shit out of you and it gets on your damn Facebook page. Because at least that way they're saying, well, who blocked the streets? Oh, it was, Black Lives Matter, or it was the 99%, if we want to go a few years ago. okay, who are those people? It just gets people talking. No, it's the saying, no press is bad press. So protests are supposed to inconvenience you. But I don't get why we have this idea that sports are this safe space.
It's this immaculate kind of sanctuary.
Yeah. The same people who are complaining about, not all of them, but a lot of the same people complaining about how Colin Kaepernick is should shut up and get his political views out of my sports because I'm here to watch a sport game, are the same people who are complaining about college kids. I'll use this meme, which I think is a perfect example, where they joke about how, 50, 60 years ago, 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds were going into war.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 20-year-olds are scared that words are going to hurt them. Well, you're fucking scared that Colin Kaepernick's words, in this case, no words, sitting down, are going to upset your pretty little safe space of football. Once again, it comes to the hypocritical side of it. You can't say one but do the other. There's no reason why athletes cannot be political. And that's the big thing that I come down to with it as well. When people want to make that argument, keep your politics out of my sports. But these are people who have this soapbox here to speak on, this platform to speak on, that the people they often are representing will never have access to. Mm-hmm. So we should be happy that somebody out there is going to do that. And those kids out there who own Kaepernick jerseys are probably, not all of them, of course, but the ones on that side of the issue are saying, oh my God, someone I care about cares about me too. And that just makes them feel a little bit better that at least somebody's on their side.
This is where we're going to end this conversation. And the reason why is...
It's probably been a long conversation.
It's been a very long conversation. And at this point, we could go all day. We could go into a lot of other things. Like Mark said... Go ahead.
I do think we need to put one thing out there for people who are still listening. Mm-hmm. You could disagree with us, and that's okay. Let's try and keep things civil in the comment section between each other, of course. And try not to argue with your fellow YouTube commenters too much. But let's also remember that it's okay if we disagree. We can still be friends. We can still continue talking about sports. We can still do that. If you disagree with us, that is perfectly okay. We're not upset at you one way or the other. We might feel certain ways about your opinions, but we don't feel certain necessarily ways about you. We're willing to still talk sports.
And the whole thing is nothing is personal. I don't want anything to be personal in the comment section, but this is where I throw that dagger out to you guys. Let us know down below what you guys think in the comment section, and let us really know. This is the kind of stuff where we kind of get real with you guys and kind of get out of our comfort zone of just talking about the sports that we look at each and every day.